for educational critical review and reaction.
A lot of people wrongly insist that if you're nice, you can't be a Satanist. And I just want to emphatically state, niceness has nothing to do with this, folks. You can be a nice person or put on the air that you're a nice person and absolutely be a Satanist in your mind and in your deeds. Niceness is not the determining factor regarding whether a person embodies the mindset of Satanism in their lives. So nice people can be de facto Satanists. And as a matter of fact, most people in our society who are perfectly nice to the average human being that comes into contact with them on a daily basis, inside their mentation, in their psychology, and in their behavior, they are de facto Satanists. And they're just wearing a mask of niceness. You know, if you peel away those layers of the onion, if you peel all those masks away, you're going to find a Satanist underneath. And this is most people. This is the average person. Okay? We're not talking about a small minority of people. The active ruling class, higher level Satanists are a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of human beings, far less than 1%. Your everyday average person who someone would consider a perfectly nice human being, deep down in their own psychology and ultimately in the behaviors they enact in the world, are satanic. They're de facto Satanists. Most people falsely believe that just because someone is quote-unquote nice to others makes them a truly good person, when in fact that is not the case. A truly good person has to properly understand objective morality and natural law and willfully choose right behavior over wrong behavior. Most people don't even understand what right behavior is versus wrong behavior. That's why they advocate for so much immoral, wrong behavior in the world. De facto Satanists seem like quote-unquote nice people and still completely espouse and embody the satanic mindset regarding what they believe and how they live in the world through their actions, through their deeds. This is a very important distinction to make, a very important concept to understand, and it's a difficult pill for many people to swallow. Yet it is true, nonetheless, whether you are triggered by this or not. This is exactly what is going on in our world. This is exactly what de facto Satanism is and is about. And it has nothing to do with whether you treat other people nicely in your day-to-day interactions with them. It's all about what you believe and ultimately what behaviors you yourself are either conducting or espousing that others conduct. Another defining hallmark characteristic of the mentality of de facto Satanism is only ever thinking about you and yours. It's me, me, me thinking all the time, and others are left at the back burner. And people will underestimate how often they do this. They don't really put their mindset in the mentality of thinking about the whole world of human beings at large and how the entire human condition is enslavement. Most human beings only ever think of their own personal life situation from the moment they wake up in the morning until the moment they go to sleep each night. That's all they ever think about is themselves and their own. Again, they may perhaps consider their immediate family, their extended family, their friends, etc., right? People who are close to them and help them in their daily situations in life. People may consider them in addition to themselves. And I say may, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't even do that. But very little beyond that, if anything. For anyone who is genuinely attempting to be honest with themselves, and that's the first dictate of awakening. If you're going to truly awaken, you can't lie to yourself. You have to be honest with yourself about the dynamics that you see at work in the world. So if we're going to really be honest with ourselves, okay, that fact cannot be denied. Most people only care about themselves, only are concerned with themselves and their own life situation, and very little beyond that. Again, they may consider family and friends, may not even do that. But if we're going to be honest with ourselves, we can't deny that fact. We have to accept that that's a daily fact of everyday life. And that's what defines de facto Satanism. Perhaps nothing better illustrates de facto Satanism. Selfish thinking is the primary defining hallmark of the satanic mindset and ideology. So again, I ask you to be honest with yourselves. How many people think this way? How many people would you honestly estimate are in this me mindset all day, every day, from the minute they wake up till the minute they go to sleep at night? And if you're honest with yourself, you're telling yourself the truth about an important dynamic of the world. How many people are completely self-centered? How many people are just in me mentation? How many people don't really care what's going on in the world? They only care about their own comfort, their own life situation. Be honest about the dynamic, and then you're going to truly understand what our work is to do to truly enlighten and wake other people up. They can't stay in that mentality if the whole world dynamic and the whole world situation is to change for the better. It's not possible. And that's a sobering reality that most people do not want to accept in life. Another hallmark, defining characteristic psychologically of being a de facto Satanist is always wanting immediate sensate gratification. Immediate pleasure in the moment, regardless of what the long-term consequences are, because one has no willpower to change. How many people would you say are like that? Almost everyone. Most human beings have been conditioned to believe that the end goal of human existence, are indeed our very purpose for living, the purpose of life, is to accumulate as much sensate pleasure and comfort as possible in life. That describes almost everyone, with a relative few exceptions. They live in a state of conditioned response, desiring only immediate sensate pleasure to such an extent that they lack the basic willpower even to stop engaging in habits that are ultimately leading them into a condition of sickness and disease. They can't bring about internal willpower and strength of will to even act in their own interests. That's how conditioned in an immediate response mechanism they are to pleasure and sensate gratification in the immediate sense. In this sense, the satanic ego that they embody actually acts as a mechanism to degrade and weaken those who subscribe to it, making them easy prey for the dark occult ruling class to poison, to degrade, to damage their ability to think properly, to have proper health to even wage any counter war against this dark occult ruling class, and not to understand their psychological strategies, because the degradation of the mind will inevitably lead to the degradation. The degradation of the body will inevitably lead to the degradation of the mind and the will. And very few people have even put this dynamic together. Very few people have even put this strategy, this way of going about accomplishing the dark occult agenda together. They can't see it for what it is. And that's because they're stuck in that I want immediate sensate gratification all the time. They cannot even delay gratification. They want it immediately. And again, this is a very important dynamic to consider and to understand, especially in light of how the dark occult interact among themselves and raise their own children, who are going to be the future, groomed to be the future rulers of the world. The inability to delay personal sensate gratification until a later time is one of humanity's primary weaknesses, and that's one of the dark occult's primary strengths. Interestingly, the ability to delay gratification until primary goals have been met is a defining characteristic of dark occultists, and a skill they always strive to teach their own young, who will eventually inherit their worldly power, especially if worldwide consciousness does not improve on a grand scale. Again, another primary aspect of the mentation, the psychology of de facto Satanists, or in other words, just about every human being, is the ego or the self raised to apotheosis or God-like position in the mind, seeing the self as God, seeing the ego as the highest force in the universe. And most people don't understand natural law. They don't recognize it. They will not even claim that it exists, let alone do they truly understand how it works upon the aggregate human behavioral choices and ultimately the behavioral conditions that we then inherit through those choices. And that is how our laws of consequence are, the laws that govern our behavioral consequence actually works. And that is what natural law is. Most people will just do whatever they have to get ahead in life, even if it means stepping over other people or using them as stepping stones. They care very little as long as they don't receive consequence in the physical world. But the real question is what are they doing to themselves thinking this way and behaving this way at a soul level? And again, I'm not talking about the minority of people, and I'm not talking about the very tiny minority that are actually in the ruling class. I'm talking about the everyday average Joe and Sally. And you would be disturbed if you are honest with yourself and really look at that dynamic. It would be highly disturbing how many people think like that and how many people are inculcated into this de facto satanic religion and mindset. If you're being honest with yourself. If you're lying to yourself, you'll tell yourself a drastically different story. But if you look at the dynamic honestly, you'll see it for what it is. Another aspect of their psychology is the ego acts as the arbiter of right and wrong. And this is the whole biblical allegory in Genesis in the Old Testament. It's about taking right and wrong into ourselves to make the decision about whether it is right or wrong, instead of recognizing right and wrong as inherent characteristics in nature, because it is about whether the behavior initiates harm to another sentient being or not, and then willfully aligning our behavior with right over wrong. Most people do not understand those characteristics and have not made that judgment, and therefore they're still operating as an arbiter of right and wrong based on whims, based on their comfort levels, based on what they want in the world, what they consider right for them, etc. So most human beings, as we've already talked about, talking about moral relativism, obviously this directly relates with moral relativism, believe that right and wrong are subjective human constructs of the mind. They see no inherent moral contradiction even with man-made laws being completely different in different places or at different times. That's one of the most blatant characteristics of the laws of man, is that it is completely morally relativistic. One thing could be legal in one place, illegal in another place across an imaginary line. There's so few people who accurately understand what the nature of a human being is by nature of reality in the physical world, without anything being given to them. How we come into the world inherently through our nature is a programmable state. And if you don't understand that, the ultimate chess master, slave masters of the world, who are playing a game of chess, and the average moron in this world doesn't even understand what checkers are, let alone how to play checkers, has not sat at the chessboard with the chess masters and is not even on the same level of being able to even understand how this game is played. Okay? This is how unsophisticated psychologically the average person is. They have such a low-level, unsophisticated psychology that it's child's play for these people to deceive them and manipulate them, because they don't even understand something as basic of what human nature actually is. And this is a proven, it's absolutely, completely proven to be this way. It is not an opinion. It is not subjective. We can willfully change our behavior, willfully mold our behavior, and have positive outcomes, have good results on the other side. If we don't do that, and we're low information, ignorant people, we're easily led, we're easily deceived, we're easily manipulated, and we're always putting out garbage result into our lives. And then we want to scream and complain about it as if it isn't us doing it to ourselves. The reality of human nature is that human beings are simply programmable. We are programmable beings. So we are not computers, but we, like computers, are programmable mentally. What we believe eventually becomes our behaviors. So if programmed beliefs can be inserted into the mind like a computer virus, bad output happens on the screen of life. If good coding happens in the mind and we understand accurately what's going on within ourselves and in our environment, then we can put good behavior out into the world, good output. It's the garbage in, garbage out dynamic of computers, often called GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. Okay? Good behavior in, good behavior, good programming in, good information in, good behavior out. That's what we have to understand it as an allegory for, or an analogy of. So we're not computers, but much like computers, if a human being has a bad file system format, which is the conditions during a child's formative years, their formative years. It's like laying the file format onto a hard drive when we format the drive. We're doing that with our children when they're in a highly programmable state in the first 6.5 to 7 years of life. That's their formative years. Then we might give them a bad operating system. That's our culture that that's at work in our environment. That's culture, which is the collective belief systems. And bad software, right? If we install badly written software programs into the human mind, then that's erroneous, rigid, and dogmatic belief systems that people just accept as being true. If we put all of that in, what's going to be the output? The output, which is behavior, which is the way of being in the world, onto the screen that we call, the screen is life, our environment, our daily operating environment, is also going to be garbage. If all that garbage programming goes in, do you expect good output onto the screen of life, quote unquote? Or do you expect horrific, tragic outcome, total garbage result? What do you think is going to be the manifested result? It doesn't take a brain surgeon or a genius to figure it out. Once again, if we're honest with ourselves. So if garbage goes in, garbage comes out, and the behavior that we output will be bad and will contribute to deteriorating conditions on a mass scale in our world. Similarly, like a computer, the behavior of a human being will largely depend upon its programming, the quality of information that is input into the being, which will enable it to process and create efficiently, if it's good. So if good information / programming goes in, the good result comes out on the other side. If garbage programming goes into the being, garbage result comes out on the other side. When we take this into the aggregate, that's the consequential results that we get societally, worldwide, and that's what natural law actually is. This isn't difficult to figure out for people who step back from their garbage programmed conditioned response belief systems. This is a very important dynamic to understand, because if people don't change their view of human nature, they stay in the satanic mindset.